Dawn, the Worlds of Final Fantasy, has art from the first four Final Fantasy games. All of the art is by Yoshitaka Amano. I suspect that opinions about this book will vary widely, but overall I'd say it's an average video game art book. This review will cover the quality of the physical book itself, the content of the book, the aesthetics, and the nostalgia evoked for the games. I'll also look at whether it provides any insight into the game's development. Let's start with the quality of the physical book. It's about 8 1/4 by 11.5 inches. It has 115 pages, which is actually pretty short. The quality of the cover and the pages is pretty average. It comes with a dust jacket that has a different design than the hardcover. As for the quality of the images, they're probably about as good as the originals, which is impressive considering how old they are. You can almost see every line and brushstroke. Overall, I'd say the quality of the physical book is average. Alright, on to the contents of the book, starting with the image variety. It seems to be mostly finalized concept art. Things might have been different back then, though, for all I know. Maybe there wasn't much iteration, they just had one drawing for each thing in the game. As for the organization, the games are presented from Final Fantasy IV to Final Fantasy I, but I think that's probably because the book was originally in Japanese, and Japanese books are compiled opposite to an English reading audience. I personally didn't think this was a very big deal. I mean, ideally, they would have changed it so an English-speaking audience would have had the same experience as the Japanese audience, though. And this might be unimportant to you as well, but the bulk of the book has no words whatsoever, but rather each image is labeled with a number. You have to look in the back of the book to see what the image is called, or what it is. Most of the entries are just 1 or 2 words, so I would have preferred if they just print that next to the image rather than the number. I suppose they were going for a minimalist aesthetic, but I don't think it would have made the book ugly to print 1 word next to a picture rather than 1 number. I mean, you shouldn't need to do this, but you could just take a photo of the reference page and then use that while you're browsing through the book. Is there any writing or insight from the artists and developers themselves? Not really. There's just the opening blurb from Amano. I would say that to a fault there's no commentary. For example, the book starts with an almost like a free association style art piece, and several fold out pages are devoted to it, but there's no explanation of it whatsoever. I thought the art was awesome, but I have no idea why it was drawn, or if it was made for a specific game, or anything else about it. It would be really nice to have even a little bit of context. I also thought it was kind of an odd way to begin the book because right from the start I had no idea what I was looking at. Okay, does this book have what you want it to have? Well, I think that really depends on what you're expecting. Hopefully this video answers your questions. This book contains art from the first 4 Final Fantasy games only, and there is nothing extra whatsoever. I personally like the book, but it is very straightforward. I mean, if you're hoping for any additional insight into the games or the art, this book does not have it. I did think it was fun to see the original art for certain monsters that have become staples in the series. I thought it was also fun to see some of the original art for what are now summons. It also has the first drawing ever of a chocobo. Yikes. I think the overall content on offer is below average. The complete absence of any commentary is a bummer, and it's annoying to constantly flip to the back of the book. Alright, on to the aesthetics. The book very much has its own style. I mean, it's the opposite of an information book. It's just art, plainly presented, as is. Although this isn't my preferred style of art book, it's hard to deny that it's engrossing and pleasing to look through. As I mentioned before, though, the flow of looking through the art is constantly interrupted by the need to turn to the back of the book. Are there any full pages of art? Yeah, the book starts with several. It's all from one piece called Dawn, and it was apparently originally painted on something super long. There are a few fold-out pages attempting to recreate a sense of the full length of the original. And throughout the book, there's also some other really nice full pages of art. As for the quality of the art, I mean, that's too dependent on personal taste. I think some of it is obviously really high quality, but you could argue that some of it is kind of rudimentary. Well, so even though there's a few issues with the aesthetics, I still think that overall they're really good, and I find the book to be really engrossing. I mean, the first time I looked through this, I was just lost in it for a couple hours. As far as nostalgia is concerned, for me it was more interesting than nostalgic. I mean, I don't have a deep connection with the first four Final Fantasy games. Though I would imagine that if you had some kind of connection with the first four games, that a lot of these images probably would make you nostalgic. Alright, Backstage. Well, even though the book has no commentary at all, I think I still gained some insight into the development of the games. I mean, this book has some of the earliest video game concept art I've ever seen. I think it's kind of interesting when it's viewed through that lens. Even though the games had rudimentary graphics, the role of the concept artist must have helped set the tone for the whole experience. I mean, it's impressive that all of these images came from just one person's imagination, and that now there's like dozens of games based off of them. I mean, I don't know much about game development, especially in the 1980s, but I find it remarkable that some programmer looked at these images as a source of inspiration for creating what was sometimes 25 pixel by 20 pixel characters. It's interesting to think about how differently things must have worked back then. I mean, art books from modern games often have final art assets that look almost exactly like the concept art, but back then the art was used more as a global source of inspiration. The artist generated like the overall feel and presence of the game, and then that needed to be translated into tiny sprites. Well, in closing, it's kind of hard to describe, but the whole book is just itself. It has art from just one person and it's all a similar style, but it's very engrossing. It might not have exactly what you want, but I really like looking at it. Well, different people want different things in video game art books, but I hope this review has been helpful in showing you what's in this one. If you have any complaints about this video, please feel free to contact my customer support center.